Hi, this is Daniel Hutchins, and today we're talking about an article from our friend Screen Rant. So today from Screen Rant, we are going to be talking about the Suicide Squad versus Guardians of the Galaxy. Which James Gunn movie is better? Okay, Suicide Squad marks James Gunn's jump to DC after two Guardians of the Galaxy movies. But does the DC Extended Universe film beat out his Marvel flick? Okay, this was from a couple hours ago, folks. Alright, warning, there are spoilers. Both Suicide Squad and Guardians of the Galaxy were strong superhero outings from the writer-director James Gunn. But the real question we're asking is, which movie was better? Gunn made his mainstream breakthrough with Guardians of the Galaxy in 2014, having previously helmed smaller fare for studios like Trauma. This was him making a leap to the big time. Gunn managed to jump easily, retaining a sense of the style that had earned him a cult following, but meshing it with the MCU to deliver the heartfelt space opera that took a bunch of C and D list characters and turned it into a major Marvel Cinematic Universe movie franchise. Gunn repeats the trick with the Suicide Squad, which once again takes the bunch of lesser-known weird comic book characters and brings them to life with his own unique way. Crossing the divide from Marvel to DC is no small feat itself for the director, but Gunn again pulls it off and then some. The Suicide Squad goes even bigger, harder, and weirder than Guardians did, for better and for worse. Related to this article is all 15 DC TV shows releasing after the Suicide Squad. But we're not talking about that, we're talking about something else. So the Suicide Squad has understandably received plenty of comparisons to Guardians of the Galaxy, since they're both made by Gunn, and feature a team of oddballs banding together to save the day. While both feature some of the director's hallmarks, there are plenty of differences between them, too, from action to humor and tone. And while both are good, there is slight disparity in quality as well. Task Force X versus the Guardians. Okay, so back in 2014, James Gunn's movie introduces viewers to a new bunch of characters who crucially were just a-holes, but were lovable a-holes. Star-Lord received one of MCU's great character introductions with an inflated sense of cool and ego that quickly appeared was hiding someone sweet, vulnerable, and rather goofy underneath. Once the Guardians all came together, though, it's where the real magic happens. The casting of each individual role was perfect, but the alchemy of them as a team makes the Guardians of the Galaxy so great. The way the heroes play off one another and learn to become the family all of them have either never had or have tragically lost, allows for a host of laughs, but also a real sweetness to the movie and plenty of emotion. But there isn't a weak link among them, which each contributed something to be. If Drax's comedy, Gamora's skills, righteousness, and redemption, Rocket's heart and hurt, and I am Groot, which that builds the larger whole. They're powerful, dysfunctional, weird, and impossible to dislike. For his Task Force X, James Gunn initially goes a lot bigger. The Suicide Squad's roster of characters is massive and full of oddballs who make the Guardians seem normal by comparison, but it's quickly whittled down to a group in similar size. With clear comparisons, King Shark is lovable non-human who can't say much, Bloodsport's the cool leader, Ratcatcher 2, the scorned heart of gold center of the team, etc. But they're much more than Guardians repeats. They all feel distinct, and Gunn repeats his trick of taking wacky minor characters and make it on its root and feel for them. Though he doesn't quite manage the same level of investment, there's a greater balance act here, meaning certain arcs aren't quite necessary or satisfactory, but Bloodsport feels slightly unfinished. Peacemaker is saved for a spin-off. Harley Quinn is slightly squashed into things. So Guardians of the Galaxy team just has a much greater chemistry, and the natural feeling between them gives it the edge here. Winner, Guardians of the Galaxy. Suicide Squad versus Guardians. Which movie has a better story? So Guardians of the Galaxy is part of the MCU, has plenty of references and connections to let you all know as much. But it's also hugely indebted to Star Wars, especially its teams and its terms of its story, and the overall feel of the movie. Marvel it may be, but this is a space opera at heart, with galactic battles to be fought, romances developed, quests to be undertaken. Guardian's story is relatively simple, structured around various characters attempting to get their hands on orbs, which typically houses the Infinity Stones. But it's a plot that always feels entertaining and keeps things moving. Clocking at about 122 minutes, which is somewhat trim by modern standards, Guardians absolutely breezes along thanks to its mix of action and irrelevance. But there are no points where the story really sags or what feels like unnecessary bloat, and the chase for the orb allows for the focus to firmly be on the titular team, allowing them to shine so brightly. It offers up some great thrills, lots of humor, and also manages to tug at the heartstrings. Related to this article is every DC Easter egg, secret, and reference in Suicide Squad. But we're not talking about that, we're talking about something else. So Suicide Squad's story similarly uncomplicated. Gets to place, takes out a thing, and when it does, decide to deliver a twist late in the day, with Peacemaker turning against and killing Rick Flag. It fits with what's established about characters and packs a punch. Like with Guardians, Gunn clearly knows the strength of this lies less in complex plotting and more in allowing the characters to take center stage. It's once again carried by just how great these characters are to watch together, while allowing for some stunning action sequences, a couple of shocks, and a whole lot of deaths. The Suicide Squad's plot does feel a little longer than necessary, though. Some of their diversions means the pacing is a bit off, and it doesn't all progress quite as neatly, with Gunn perhaps luxuriating just a tad too much in the outrageousness of it all. The gore arguably hurts the Suicide Squad stories as well. While most of it's earned, there are moments where a quick visceral impact is chosen over something a bit deeper which Guardians doesn't suffer from. Winner, Guardians of the Galaxy. The Suicide Squad action compared to Guardians of the Galaxy. James Gunn had a long promise that Suicide Squad would be the biggest, most epic movie he's made, in terms of action and sense of scale, spectacle, and from the films. He certainly delivers. The Suicide Squad is a comic book movie, but it also draws from 1970s war films too. This is a film that's not afraid to get gritty, dark, and dirty, words that not too long ago would have produced scorn in conjunction with a DC Extended Universe movie, but here show a greater breadth of Gunn's filmmaking abilities than in Guardians of the Galaxy, in particular for its practical effects. Gunn sets his stall out early on with an explosive opening on the Corto Maltese beach, and that really sets the tone. This is a hyper-violent, gruesome movie, and a chaotic one, but the director never loses control of the action, nor the perspective of the characters within it either. There's room for huge set pieces that are incredibly fun to watch, but also more personal fight scenes that better capture the personal dynamic of the team, and show off individual fighting skills, such as Harley Quinn's flower power sequence. Okay, but in that sense of things, Guardians of the Galaxy isn't quite able to compete. It does have some of its own great fight sequences. Pretty much anything involving Gamora is great, while the brutish strength of Drax is used to great effect. and there's good action comedy value in Guardians as a whole. Again, there were plenty of flaws in that regard, but it falls down a little too much towards the end, with a big CGI battle in the sky that is overly familiar and does little to differentiate itself from much of what's come before and since in the MCU. It's not bad though, but by any means, but compared to both the Guardians and the Suicide Squad, it is lesser, showing how Gunn has advanced in that regard at least. The winner of that is Suicide Squad. Starro vs. Ronan. Which villain is better? Another of the weaker elements of Guardians of the Galaxy was Ronan the Accuser, the chief villain from the MCU movie, albeit one partly in service of none other than Thanos himself. The core idea of Ronan as a Kree zealot isn't bad, but execution is. There's no room in the story to truly flesh out his character, motivations, or much of anything about him, because being a bland blue guy who likes to kill people, actor Lee Pace doesn't get any opportunity to show what he's capable of, and in the end, Ronan only really works as something of a joke figure in Guardians, in particular Star-Lord to play off and make fun of him, which makes them better, but doesn't help Ronan as a villain. This was a time when Marvel really struggled with its villains, and while Ronan wasn't the nadir of the run, he was very much part of it. Related to this article, the Suicide Squad's Secret Guardians cameo, where to spot Clementov. But we're not talking about that, we're talking about something else. So the DC Extended Universe has had its own struggles with forgettable villains, especially in terms of weak CGI creations. But the Suicide Squad Starro avoids those mistakes. The giant pink and blue starfish certainly looks impressive and memorable if nothing else, with a vibrancy and sense of fun to the design often missing than larger-than-life bad guys. He's also a major threat, given he's essentially a kaiju in terms of city-destroying potential, quickly leveling much of Corto Maltese indeed. If there is an issue with Starro, it's that he's arguably too big a threat for Task Force X to be dealing with. But most crucially, though, is that Starro has a tragic backstory that works. It makes you understand and even feel for him to a degree, while wanting him to be defeated at the same time. The winner of that was the Suicide Squad. Suicide Squad soundtrack versus Guardians of the Galaxy's awesome mix. Even from the first trailer, it was clear Guardians of the Galaxy was going to be different, at least in terms of superhero movies. When it came to a soundtrack, with audience immediately hooked on a feeling, and this was going to be something special. And so it proved. James Gunn extensively curated a soundtrack full of 60s and 70s pop hits and deep cuts, all of which were used to perfect complement or brilliantly jigsaw-proofs. The action on screen, from the use of Come and Get Your Love to the opening of Ooh Child to a dance-off, is truly awesome mix that immediately gives a sense of character, elevates the action, and will guarantee you want to listen to the whole soundtrack on repeat afterwards. Given the success of the Guardians of the Galaxy, then it's somewhat fitting Gunn ended up directing Suicide Squad and putting together a soundtrack. After all, the 2016 Suicide Squad tried and failed to copy Guardians' approach to music, a mishmash of radio songs that gave it a feeling of music video rather than a movie. Though it came from the studio, not David Ayer, Gunn delivers the kind of musicality Warner Brothers wanted all along, with another great collection of songs. It's even more eclectic than Guardians, which isn't surprising given this is a movie with a love montage at the Fratellis whistle for the choir, but it doesn't have quite the same cohesion that Guardians does, which is boosted by the emotional connection of Peter Quill narrative importance, nor does it quite demand to be played immediately afterward. Winner of Guardians of the Galaxy. Why Guardians of the Galaxy is better than Suicide Squad? Okay, that's a little bit of an understatement, but we're going to be talking about that. So, both the Suicide Squad and Guardians of the Galaxy are very good superhero movies, with each reflecting different aspects of James Gunn's filmmaking style, sensibilities, and personality. While delivering a big comic book team-ups audiences want, the Suicide Squad is gory, violent, deeply weird, and earns R rating. For Gunn, it draws on the trauma and roots to deliver the kind of movie that he could never make under Marvel and Disney. It's certainly not perfect, though. The pacing is off in places, there's a little less emotional weight, and some characters get a shorter shift of things. Guardians of the Galaxy isn't perfect either, but it perhaps does more things right, or at least more of what matters. It may not be as pure and Gunn in terms of gore and shock value, but it does feel like a far more personal movie for him, with its heart on his sleeve. That allows a much greater emotional response to Guardians of the Galaxy, especially since they combined with a more likable and memorable team of characters, and a stronger script means that Guardians of the Galaxy is ultimately better than the Suicide Squad. So there you go, guys. That is your information for today. I'm going to probably do another video later. Just let me know what your thoughts are on this debate on the Suicide Squad versus the Guardians of the Galaxy. And again, you have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your afternoon. Bye.